I'm Vanessa Canby, and this is a pros and cons of living in Ghana. I was born and raised in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and then my dad is from Ghana, my mum is from Scotland. I lived in London for about 5 years at one point, and then I moved with my husband and 2 kids to Accra, Ghana for a couple of years. We have since moved back to Scotland, but lately I've been reminiscing and thinking about our time living in Ghana, and I thought I would let you know my perspective. So this is just from my perspective of, what you've heard of my background. This isn't every single person that lives in Ghana. Obviously, there is serious issues in certain areas that I'm not going to get into, but I'm just going to talk about my sort of day-to-day, more superficial pros and cons. This video is sponsored by Sendwave, and I'll get into that a bit later. Overall, we absolutely loved living in Ghana. When we moved there, my kids were 4 and 7 years old, I think around there. And so they did go to school there. And so I have a bit of that experience as well. So I'll get into that as well. Let me start with the pros. So without a doubt, the weather is just fantastic. It's about 30 degrees all year round. Sometimes it gets hotter up to like 37, especially in the north. We went on a safari up in the north and it was seriously hot up there. But we lived in Accra, so yeah, it was around 30 degrees. And that means your lifestyle is just totally different. I mean, if you already live in a hot country, you'll know. But obviously, like, we spent the weekends at the beach. Our favourite beach resorts were Sea Resort and Tills Beach Resort. We also used to go to the pool every weekend to different hotels. Our favourites were Movenpick and Labadi Beach Hotel. And that is like something I miss so much. Living in Scotland, it's so cold, and honestly, I just would rather not go outside. So that lifestyle, getting the vitamin D, I feel like it lifts everybody's mood, and it's just so lovely. And things like kids' parties are always outside, they're rarely inside. You can be out in the pool every day, you can have a pool at your house, the kids can play outside so much more. And I just love that lifestyle of being in the warm weather. Also for my skin, I had a constant glow, a constant tan. Just loved that part of it. Also in with the sort of weather comes the sun rise and set at the same time every day. And I never knew how much that would really affect my mood and my life. But I loved having that structure of every single morning it rised at about 6 a.m. and then it set at about 6 a.m. So it was like what's it called? Circadian rhythm. Oh my gosh. Rhythm, your body rhythm, is the same every day. Whereas in the UK, every year it's changing all year round. Like right now, for example, it gets dark at about 3:30 p.m. So, it's like dark from 3 until 8 o'clock the next day. Whereas it was just so nice to just know what was happening every day. And yeah, I really loved that. So I found that there was a better sense of community in Ghana. I felt like people were, I don't know if this is to do with the weather as well, but people were always up for meeting up, doing fun things together. Like last minute even, people would say, oh, do you want to meet up today? Or should we go for lunch? Should we go for dinner? Whereas I feel like, and I'm actually trying not to compare it to like the UK, but normally it's like you're booking things months in advance or weeks in advance, like in 2 weeks' time, should we meet and go for coffee? Whereas in Ghana, I just felt like people were much more available and free to meet up. And also just this whole community feel of there was always events going on, always parties. There just seemed to always be things going on. And if you're into clubbing or that sort of thing, which I was when I was younger, but those days are pretty much over for me these days. It's really a great place to be because you could be going out every night of the week, all night long, having breakfast the next morning. That's what I used to do when I was younger. So much fun. The next thing is food. Oh my gosh, the mango is just the best thing in the whole entire world. The fresh fruit and veg in Ghana is incredible. If you've been there, you will know it's just delicious. And I mean, even here, it's imported from Ghana, so many things, like even like bananas, mango, coconut, watermelon, all those delicious fruits you can get readily any place. Just on the side of the road, you can just be buying, you know, having coconut water and all these things for like a very, very reasonable price. And that sort of healthy lifestyle is something that I really loved. Also, like going to the market, buying vegetables as well to cook with. Very fresh, you know, probably more organic, on the more organic side. And yeah, you just feel like much all around healthier. This video is sponsored by Sendwave, and Sendwave is a remittance app which allows you to send money from the UK, Germany, the US and Canada, as well as other countries, to Ghana. And this is something that I use all the time, even to this day. And it's a fast service, it's very easy to use, the app. And I use this to send money to family and friends. And also, for example, I'm building on my land, so I'll send money for building materials. I actually use Sendwave to pay employees, so like my videographer. I use Sendwave because you can send money to a bank or to mobile money. And mobile money is basically a mobile wallet on your phone, and it's used widely throughout Ghana. So it comes out of my UK account into their either bank account or mobile money. The reason why I use Sendwave is because it's been going since 2017. It's reliable. Personally, I've been using it since I think 2018, and it's never failed me. They have really great exchange rates on the app, and you can check in app to see what the exchange rate is right now. It saves you money because it doesn't cost you anything to send the money from your UK, US, German or Canadian bank account into the hands of somebody in Ghana. You can send money 24/7. Click the link in the description below to download the app and enter the promo code Vanessa to get £20 off your first transfer. Okay, so the next thing is convenience. So for someone like me who likes to get my hair braided, it's just so convenient. I could get my hair braided anywhere, any area, 2 minutes from my house, 5 minutes from my house, so many different options. You know, someone can come to your house and braid your hair. My son, you know, going to the barber shop, so many options. Whereas obviously in Scotland, because not that many people have my hair texture, there's not many braiders, about 45 minutes from my house. So, you know, I love the fact that it's like a place for somebody like me, if you know what I mean. And that leads into the next one, which is about racism. So Ghana isn't a place you're going to face racism. There is classism, which is obviously something different. But, you know, for black and brown people, it's somewhere that you can really feel at home. And I mean, personally, obviously I'm mixed race, so I do still get called like Obroni sometimes, which means white person or foreigner. But if you are black, then you're definitely going to feel fully at home. And that's something that I feel, you know, when I've interviewed people who have come to Ghana for the first time ever, they have felt like they've never felt, let's say like in America or in the UK, they've always had to think about, you know, the fact they're black. And personally, obviously, like it's something I think about. It's not like conscious, it's more like a subconscious thing. You know, you're thinking about it, like when people are even looking at my hair or whatever. Whereas there, like, it's just not something you have to think about, which is like a huge weight off your shoulders, which is so lovely, especially for me who has kids. You know, for my son, he really felt that difference, like being in school, other people having their hair braided, being like, oh, I want to get my braids like, you know, such and such at school, or just feeling like belonging is just such a pro of living in Ghana. International schools. For me, the international school fees were way cheaper than private school fees here in the UK, like less than half the price. And in my opinion, the education is better in some ways. Well, in most ways. I loved the school that my kids went to when we were in Ghana. The education, I'd say they were like 2 years ahead of what they were learning over here. I loved the fact of, I've always loved this actually, like school is appreciated and valued by Ghanaians and education in general, whereas in the UK, it's really not. People do not take it seriously. I'm talking about like kids do not take it seriously. and, you know, are rude to teachers, rude to each other. Whereas I feel like there's a level of respect in Ghana for the teachers, for your peers, that is just like, it's just lost, honestly, in the UK. I don't know how it is in other parts of the world. So that's something that like I really, really miss, is that sort of respect, as well as the level of education and the competitiveness amongst the children to do well. And again, something that's kind of lost here. And even in, you know, private schools and expensive schools and stuff like that, like in the UK, it's just totally lost. You know, kids are so rude these days. And I think even for my kids moving back, having lived there, it was very difficult, because they were like, what is going on here? You know, people like talking back and all that stuff, which just wouldn't happen over there. And there's so many great international schools to choose from. If you're not used to paying school fees, you are going to probably think it's expensive. But because I was used to paying school fees, for me, it was actually cheaper. So the next thing is about staff and having, you know, help, for example, a driver, a cook, a cleaner. So because the rate of labour is less, you're able to give jobs to people that are looking for jobs. And so that is something that's very helpful. Honestly, like personally, I was never made to be like a domestic goddess. I know some people are so amazing at like cleaning and staying on top of the household chores, but it's something that I struggle with, let's put it that way. So being able to hire somebody to help around the house and also to help, you know, with driving and stuff like that and with the kids was so, so helpful. So I personally didn't have a nanny, but I just had somebody helping, you know, cleaning. Basically, I've had cleaners in the UK as well, but it's like 2 hours a week maybe. Whereas this is, you know, somebody coming in every day, staying on top of like the laundry, the cleaning, helping cook here and there, stuff like that. And then I also had a driver who was like full-time employed, which was so helpful. I mean, I was grateful in the sense that my mum was in Ghana with us, so she helped me with the kids when I had to work and things like that. So the people is the next thing. People are very welcoming, relaxed, chill, and also direct. So that's something I really like. So I feel like in somewhere like the UK, people like skip around things. They will not tell you what they think if they have something on their mind. They will just not say it. They'll just say other things. Whereas in Ghana, like people will tell you what they think, what they're thinking. That some people might see that as a con, but personally I see that as a pro, because I want to know what people are thinking. I don't really need you to just like pretend that everything's okay when it's not or whatever. So that's something that I love, is the directness. But it also comes in a sense of like, let's say you've put on weight, like people will just say you're fat or like whatever, and it's not to be derogatory, those sort of things. Anyway, that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is like generally people are very, very relaxed, not that stressed. That then comes into the next point on like time management. It's just not really a thing, and I do think you get used to it quite quickly, but you do just have to let go. I actually quite like it in certain circumstances. So let's say you are actually waiting for somebody to come, like a plumber, and they said they would come at, I don't know, 8, and they actually don't come until the next day. That would be annoying, but I feel like you just have to adapt your life to accommodate for things like that. Like let's say that was going to happen, maybe you have somebody else in the house to, you know, hang around if you've got stuff to do, because you just kind of have to expect it. But sometimes, like, let's say, you know, you're going out for dinner and it's like, okay, let's meet at 10. I don't know why you would meet for dinner at 10. Anyway, 7, and, you know, your friend's running like 30 minutes late. That doesn't really bother me. Or like if I'm running 30 minutes late, that stuff, I just feel like that's just kind of like chill. And so I think it just like everyone is very, very relaxed, and I personally love that. Another pro is definitely the fact that you cannot order things online in the same way for example, Amazon and stuff like that. Like, it's just not a thing. So that means I personally saved so much money because I'm not buying things that I absolutely don't need. Clothes shopping isn't something I really do anyway. I'm really not bothered about clothes. I would rather go to an independent shop and, you know, buy local clothes or buy fabric and get it made. Oh my gosh, that's another pro. The fact you can go buy fabric and then go to the seamstress and show them a design and get clothes made. That was just like life changing for me and for the kids, because I would get the kids clothes made and I would get myself clothes made. Anyway, yeah, the fact you're not spending unnecessarily, and like consumerism isn't the same as it is here in the UK. You know, for example, things like Black Friday that just happened, you know, like they're trying to push stuff down your throat, like, buy it now. You know, that's just not really the same over there, which I love. Okay, the next thing, I found this as a pro in my circumstances, which was healthcare. I know that in some people's circumstances, it's not a pro, and for certain ailments and stuff like that, especially like some of my friends, you know, like my friend I interviewed recently, Marintia, she had to basically move away from Ghana to get better healthcare service. But personally, I found it to be, so in the UK we have the NHS, which is paid for by the taxpayer, and whereas in Ghana, obviously you pay, it's like private healthcare, I guess, you're paying for the service, but I found it to be very timely. So for example, once I found like a lump and I managed to get the whole thing seen to in one day, like, well, within a few hours. I got the like ultrasound and then I got the scan like straight away, you know. Obviously this is a huge privilege because so many people wouldn't have had the funds to just go and pay, but even the price that I paid was a fraction of what you would pay in the UK for something similar. And then I got to see a consultant straight away who looked at the, you know, scan or whatever, and, you know, said what it was. Luckily it was nothing to worry about. But, you know, something like that in the UK, if I tried to start going down that, it would take ages. Like, you're not probably going to see someone the same day. It's going to take a while. So that, you know, my kids, I found a really good hospital for them, or like doctor's sort of surgery, where anything that went on, like everything was just done very quickly. Blood tests, you just waited like an hour and you got the results. Whereas here you have to wait a few days to get the results. Stuff like that I found actually very efficient. But I do think if it's something more serious, then it might not be the same, but I'm just talking from my experience. There is a lot of opportunities there in terms of like business opportunities, things that you might see and you might think, oh, like that needs maybe like a bit more improvement in that area or whatever. You can actually start a business and make real impact in the country, and you could see the impacts that you're making. There's things that probably aren't yet being imported that you could import. You know, like there's a lot of business opportunities. Obviously, people sometimes don't like when you talk about cons, but this is just the reality. Everywhere has pros and cons. Okay, so cons. Just want to make clear, I'm absolutely not bashing the country. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. And I feel like this is really helpful if you are thinking of moving to Ghana and just want to know what things, you know, might be on your mind when you're there. So first off for me is the mosquitoes. So Ghana obviously has malaria, and if you get malaria, obviously it can be treated if it's acted on fast. And people get malaria, you know, all the time. And then at every pharmacy you just go, they can test you and then they can give you the medication to take, or, you know, you would go to the hospital depending on how bad it was. But obviously if it's not treated in a timely manner, like it can be fatal, which is, I guess, like the scary thing for me when you've got children. You know, when it's just you don't probably think about it as much. Like when I went to Ghana and I was just partying when I was younger, I don't even know if I was wearing mosquito repellent. I guess back then, actually, I was probably taking malaria tablets, whereas when we were living there, we were not taking malaria tablets because we were living there for like for years. So I don't even know if you can take them for years, you know, like what effects that would have. Regardless, I made sure that my kids were covered up, like, you know, arms and legs, and myself, whenever it was dark outside. We wore mosquito repellent, like, all the time, not all the time, but like if we were out at night, or if we were going somewhere that was going to have mosquitoes, let's say we were going to a park or something like that. I mean, I say a park, I'm like, when have we ever been? No, anyway. So then what else? Obviously, I would make sure there was no mosquitoes in the house, make sure, you know, the windows were shut, the doors were opened and shut really quickly. Any nets that we had on the windows had no holes, stuff like that. And then if there was mosquitoes in the house for some reason, we would spray, which I don't love because that's obviously toxic, but at the same time, I'd rather spray than, you know, have mosquitoes in the house. The other thing is, one of my children is allergic to mosquito bites. So that meant when they got bitten, it was like, it would turn into like a welt type thing, and it was honestly like so sore and itchy for them, and there was nothing really you could do about it after the fact, apart from maybe like antihistamines. Anyway, so I was trying at all costs to avoid mosquitoes, and that was something that was like on my mind every day, I would say. We never got malaria, by the way, so I guess my precautions worked, or maybe, you know, we just never came into contact with mosquitoes with malaria. I mean, I didn't really get bitten that much. Eventually, I guess, like, you know, as they say, your skin gets used to it, or the mosquitoes aren't as interested in you. I don't know what happens, right? But I don't think you get bitten as much when you live there as when you go on holiday, but I'm not sure about that. Okay, so the next thing is the lack of like sidewalks or pavements, and the thing about that is I'm not a big exerciser, right? But I do quite like just being able to walk outside of my house and walk to the shop and buy something and walk back, or just like go for a walk around the block or something like that. But there, in a lot of areas in Accra, there is no sidewalks, and obviously that's a bit dangerous to be walking on the actual road. And there is areas that do have more pavements and sidewalks, like more like upmarket areas like Cantonments or Labone, but even then, it's not everywhere, so you might get to a point and then it's just like ends. And I just think that is something that you don't realise that's going to have an impact, that actually is a bit annoying. And it would be nice if there was more like safe walkable places, because the thing is, people are out on the street walking. It doesn't stop people, but it stops me. And there is actually places you can go for a walk. For example, Legon Botanical Gardens is a place that you could go for a walk if you're wanting to do that, and we did do that regularly. That's the sort of places that you're going to find mosquitoes. When I say park, that was what I was talking about. But you're also going to find, you know, ants and bugs and stuff like that in Legon Botanical Gardens. But anyway, obviously it's like bushy, but it's a place that you can go. If you've got dogs, you can take your dogs for a walk there. Economic fluctuations. The cedi appreciates and depreciates. It can quite rapidly depreciate or appreciate overnight. So, you know, one day you could go to the shop and something is, I don't know, let's just say 10 cedis. The next day you go to the shop and it's like a completely different price, especially in things like building materials. You know, if you're building a house, the prices change so like crazily, and the cedi changes in value so much. And that's why when people say, oh, why are houses priced in dollars? I'm pretty sure the developers aren't taking the money in dollars. It's just because the cedi changes price so much that, let's say they were to market it in cedis, every day the price would have to be changing, and it's just like not practical to be just constantly changing the price every single day or throughout the day changing the price. So that's something to, you know, just be aware of. So that impacts like fuel as well as food as well as life. Paying upfront, so rent, people will often ask you to pay 1 year upfront, which in one sense is good, in one sense is bad. I mean, in the sense it's good is that obviously you have to save up to pay for your rent, and then you kind of don't have to think about it for a year, although you are going to be saving again. But in another sense, it's like going to be a lot of money at once. Let's say your rent is $2,000 a month and they want 1 year up front. Obviously, that's $24,000. And that's a lot of money to be shelling out. And that is quite common, like across the board. You will find some people that won't take a year up front, but then some people will take 2 years up front. So, you know, that is something to be aware of. Water and electricity instability. So water is something that is, you know, such a privilege to be able to turn on the tap and have water. In one of our houses, the Ghana water like rarely came out the tap. So that meant we had to order water from these guys. I've got so many vlogs. If you want to go through my vlogs from when I was living in Ghana, you can really see the whole experience. But basically we would hire these trucks and people would come with basically water in these like tanks, and then they would have to put this hose in and then like put it into our water like holders in the house. But we had to do that every couple of days, and it was expensive, it was inconvenient, you didn't really know when the water was going to run out, and just trying to stay on top of that was quite a lot. And then, so if it was my own house, obviously I was renting, and I actually asked the landlord, like, can we put in a borehole? But if it was my own house, I would put in a borehole, so I would obviously then have water all the time. But then even a borehole, there's the question of, is it even good for the world to have a borehole? Anyway, that's another question for another day. But that would obviously solve the problem of water. Electricity can go off sometimes. It's like not all the time. There's sometimes where it can be worse than others in terms of like how much the electricity is put off. So like it's called dumso. Is that what? If you've got a generator, which we did have, it means it's fine. You put on the generator, you have electricity. If it goes off and you don't have a generator and you don't have, let's say, solar panels, you're just not going to have electricity, which is fine for some people. I mean, I know people that do not have any backup electricity and they are totally fine. But personally, I would get really hot. So let's say the electricity would run out in the middle of the night, the generator would run out of fuel, and then like it would be like 2 a.m. and my husband would have to like get in the car, drive to the petrol station, buy diesel, and then come back, put it in the generator. You know, it's just like these little things. It sounds like quite a minor thing, but like when it happens quite a lot, it like just drains your energy. It just like takes up a lot of energy. These like little things for like everyday life, like water and electricity, are quite a lot. Let's put it that way. But there's obviously ways to counteract it. If you own your own place, you could have solar, you could have a borehole. You know, there's ways to sort this out. You could have solar with like enough batteries to be storing enough energy. Like this is the sort of thing I would do when I have my own place. But when you're renting, obviously, like you're not going to put in a whole solar system. Although to be honest, I know people who have put in solar systems whilst renting. Trying to get basic tasks done can take a very long time sometimes, and you just can't tell. Like you just cannot tell what's going to happen next. So let's say let me try and think of, okay, like a bank trip or registering things. For example, there was a point where you had to re-register your Ghana card with your SIM card. Just very long. You could go to the bank, it could be very long. Like there's a lot of bureaucracy, and things can just take a very long time. For example, I'm waiting for a bank card that I ordered, I'm not joking, about 4 months ago, and I've just remembered that. And like this is the sort of thing that I don't really need it, so it's not a big deal. But if I needed it, do you know how annoying that would be? And you know, I'd probably keep going back to the bank and, you know, be sitting there and blah blah blah. So just like that's one example, but could be so many things. You know, like your car, you need like this thing and that thing, this stamp or that stamp. You probably need to go to this office, go to that office. things just take a long time and it can be like very draining, I guess because it's like hot and then you're having to drive around and all that stuff. Business practice. Because like I've not grown up there, I don't necessarily know like all of like the lay of the land or anything like that. There was some things that were challenging, you know, like chasing invoices and the way things would run. Okay, so the next thing is like stomach issues. And this is fine if you just cook at home, but I guess it's just like being vigilant with like where you're eating out and just not just eating anywhere unless your tummy is fully accustomed to everything. So I think after you've been there for a while, it's fine and your stomach will be accustomed to everything. And when I say everything, I don't even know what I'm talking about. But like before that, like one of my family members, for example, had like a really bad stomach issue for months, and it turns out that it was like a specific type of water that we were using. I'm talking about bottled water. So that's so then we just drank Bell Aqua water. So we had like a water dispenser at home and also bottled water. So we used to just kind of drink any bottled water, not any, but you know, the sort of main brands. But then we realized, okay, no, we just have to drink Bell Aqua because there was an issue with one other. The reason why we found that out is because another friend had the same and they'd been to the doctor and the doctor had said, are you drinking this water? And it had ended up being the water. That's just like an example. But you can get stomach bugs anywhere, you know, like you can get stomach bugs in the UK from eating at certain restaurants and stuff like that. Okay, so infrastructure. And this is definitely getting better. You know, I've been so many times this year, and since we left, I've been so many times, and there's more roads being built and stuff like that. But there is a lot of traffic in certain areas, and that is you can just be in traffic for hours and hours. And then the other thing is, because a lot of the drains aren't covered, they can get blocked, and then when it rains in the rainy season, it can like flood, which is obviously not ideal for getting around or for anyone or for people's houses, and you know, the list goes on. Anyway, thank you so much. I actually don't like to end on a bad note, so yeah, let me just say overall, Ghana is the most amazing, freeing, peaceful, enjoyment center, incredible place to live. And you'll see from my channel that, you know, there's so many videos on Ghana, on houses for sale in Ghana, or from my experience when I lived there, if you see those videos as well, vlogs, which are more like real life, or interviewing people about their experiences. And you will see that everyone generally loves living in Ghana, but I just thought I would highlight the pros and cons for anybody who is thinking about moving to Ghana. And thanks so much to Sendwave for sponsoring this video again. And just go into the description below and download the app using the link, and then enter the promo code Vanessa to get £20 off your first transfer. Thanks so much. See you later. Bye.